Okay, welcome to our new podcast called Behind the Uniform, a candid conversation with Wyoming Guard members. In each podcast, we'll delve into the lives of the Wyoming Guard members. Listeners will get to hear personal stories from Guard members that go beyond their duty and responsibilities in the military. This will be an opportunity for you to get to know them, their lives, experiences, and perspectives on various topics. Our guest today is Major Karen Hinkle, Judge Advocate for the Wyoming Air National Guard and Senior Legal Counsel for the Wyoming Military Department. And today, hosting with me, Master Sgt. Jacqueline Marshall, a.k.a. Dr. J.
Nice.
I have Major James Micky Fisher.
Rick.
Also known as DJ McGriddle. We're going to have fun today with this, so... And we are both from the Wyoming Air National Guard Headquarters Public Affairs team.
So, Major Hinkle, we're going to start with some questions just to get to know you a little bit, all right? So we're having a conversation here. This is, I know you haven't done one of these podcasts in many, many moons, you said, so nothing to be nervous about. We're just having a conversation. The most important question we're going to start with first. What inspired you to join the Air Force, and how did you get started on this path that you're on?
So this is always a funny question for me because I feel like most people have this, I'm really patriotic and my family was in the military. And for me, it was none of those things. So I went to law school and my first year was in 2008, which if you recall, that was a big economic crash. Mm-hmm. And the law school I went to was a very good law school, and most people were going to work at really large corporate law firms, and they suspended a lot of their hiring of 1Ls. That's what you call your first term law student anyway. And I was like, man, those corporate jobs are probably not going to happen for my summer internship. So that's difficult. But I also had this sinking feeling like I didn't really want to be a corporate lawyer. I didn't want to deal with money. That's just not my driver. And I was thinking back to, a lot of years before when I was in college getting my undergrad degree, I actually interned for the Fort Riley Public Affairs Office.
Nice.
Shockingly,
Wow.
You probably didn't know that.
Interesting.
And so I really enjoyed working with those guys. I mean, no offense to the Army folks out there. I'm not an Army person. I love the Army folks, though, because they have some sort of, I don't know, there's just a je ne sais quoi about them. They're entertaining. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to join after doing that internship, but later in my life, I found myself working for a Department of Defense contractor doing medical training. And so I was kind of thrust back into the environment working with some old Special Forces guys who were pretty gritty, training guys who were getting ready to go out and deploy and life-saving techniques. And they were pretty cutting edge at the time. And God, it was just cool, right? I really liked the people who were drawn to service. And so with this 2008 economic crash and looming employment prospects, mm-hmm. I was like, honestly, why don't I look at the military? And at the time, my partner was supportive, and so I ended up interviewing. I interviewed with Army, Air Force, and Navy, and it was just a clear fit with the Air Force. It was the best interview. It was so easy. I just enjoyed it thoroughly, and it actually happened to be at one of the little tiny Air Reserve bases in Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
And it's been a good fit ever since.
It's awesome. And I know a lot of people are very happy you made that decision.
Yes.
So were you still in college at that time? I
was in law school.
So you were still in law school. Mm-hmm. How many more years did you have left then? Or was it just one more year after that?
So I interviewed early in my second year, and I kind of came in through a weird program called the one-year college program. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about that is, so I went to law school late, all right? I was in my late 20s, early 30s. The one-year college program, if you get picked up for it, it puts you into ROTC as a law student. And so I got selected for the program. And so I actually ended up going through ROTC with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old very gung-ho folks in my late 20s, early 30s. And that was very entertaining. It was
only for the 1 year. So you did ROTC for the 1 year with the program.
Yeah. Well, no, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but it was a good experience. It was just, I remember being very old. Yes.
Well, here you are.
Yeah, here you are. I wanted to ask because I'm curious. So how long have you been in so far?
So in May, I will hit 12 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Sweet. Well, we'll roll through the questions here. You got the next one, Jackie.
All right. So can you share with us some of your most memorable experiences in the military?
Sure. So, these are always hard because there's a lot of memories, and I'm sure everybody experiences this, where sometimes the first thing that comes to your mind is like, not a great memory. But I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a variety. So one of my favorite memories was actually this past summer, I finally got to ride in a helicopter in a Black Hawk.
Awesome.
We got to go tour Camp Guernsey. I had been dying to ride in some sort of aircraft because it's the Air Force, right? And to not, well, of course it was an Army aircraft, so go figure. But it's just, as a JAG, we don't get to be that operational very often. And that's one of the tough things about our job. We're military, but we're professionals, and it sometimes we feel a little bit removed from the mission. So to just get to do that with the door open and drool all over my face from the wind and my hair in knots, it was just the best experience ever.
That's incredible.
So I love that.
Yeah. I was going to say, doesn't it just like
it invigorates
Yeah,
you.
you're like, I'm part of the military.
100%. No, it was great. And I was like, I'm going to totally, rebel out of this thing. Okay, probably not. But, why not? So that's a cool, like, operational kind of mission. And then when I think back kind of to legal career stuff, so I was a defense counsel on my last bit of active duty. And so I had a few cases where we were able to get defense clients exonerated through a court-martial. It's a really stressful way to go about getting a successful resolution for a client, but I got to tell you, there is nothing better than having a client you believe in get a not guilty verdict on the stand after a grueling however many day trial. And I remember this one young kid in particular just got caught in some horrible circumstances, got bullied by somebody, acted a little rashly, but we were able to get him exonerated. And it was amazing. My co-counsel totally had that, moment in the courtroom where it's like, you can't handle the truth, but it wasn't that obvious. But I mean, he just had this really powerful cross of the poor guy who caused the whole kerfuffle, and that's a great word, by the way, kerfuffle.
Nice,
yes.
But it's just like the relief on that kid's face, and just knowing that they have their life to look forward to. You can't take that away. And so I had several clients where we were able to get really good victories. And this is hard, right? When we talk about defense work, sometimes people are like, man, you're just getting them off on a technicality and you're terrible. And it's like, you get to know these people, right? They're humans. Sometimes they've made a tiny mistake. Sometimes it gets blown out of proportion. And so to be able to get them a result and know that they'll be able to continue their life and move forward and recover and be a good contributing member, it's the best feeling in the world.
Oh,
I miss that. When you win as a prosecutor, I guess some people probably get it from that, but I've always felt kind of a sense of sorrow because it validated that something really bad happened. But with defense, when something goes right, it's pretty awesome.
Oh, sounds
That's awesome. Yeah. And how about you talk a little about yourself, because you're kind of a big deal, I've heard, as of this week, drill weekend. So you were just recently announced as the Outstanding Air Reserve Command Judge Advocate of the Year.
Yep. As I've explained to you, I don't like talking about
I know.
myself.
Just give us a little highlight about it.
This is actually pretty cool, and I look at it as pretty cool for the state of Wyoming. So that every year, just like in every career field, right, there's awards that recognize people who've been making some good contributions to their career fields. And the Harmon Award is the short name for it, right? So that recognizes, quote unquote, the outstanding JA amongst the Guard and the Reserve Forces. And it's the typical thing, right? They'll do your MAGCOM. So we have AMC, ACC, and then I think there's the other category for folks that don't fall into one of those two. Ultimately goes to TJAG, so that's our Judge Advocate General for the entire Air Force. They'll pick the winner. We are not at that level yet, just at the AMC. But I'll tell you what, first off, a lot of times the reservists have the opportunity to win those because they're usually more involved in deployments. And so I think it's really cool to recognize the Guard mission and all the different things that we do. And we got to do some really great legislative work this past year. And I think that's probably what tipped the factor for, and I really do think this is a state thing. We got some great accomplishments in there that support recruiting and retention initiatives for our airmen. And so, I worked hard on those along with other folks. And it's nice to see that recognized at the national level by people who don't necessarily usually look at what Wyoming is trying to do to make things better for their soldiers and airmen. So it's awesome. I'm really excited that got recognized.
Oh,
That's awesome. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, us as public affairs, we're always working with JA. You know that very well. And throughout you guys know, I've been active duty for the last 9 years, and I've worked with a lot of JA offices, and every single rep that I've ever worked with from legal has always been extremely professional, as we'd expect them to be, right? But just extremely professional, very polished. So hearing that you earned this award it was awesome to see that in little Wyoming here. So,
and if I may, I would just like to give a shout out to some people who really helped. So one is Chief Ayers, because I wouldn't have even thought to put myself in for this, and she's the only reason I did. Senior Austin over at the Air Guard was an instrumental part of getting all those recruiting and retention initiatives passed through the legislature. He doesn't know it. I got him a governor's pin, but this is your public shout out, Senior Austin. I'd also thank Colonel Taylor and Major Ruff over on the Army recruiting office, because they had a lot of involvement. Sergeant Major Herrera, there were a couple other folks who were involved. And then, of course, Mr. Smith, who is a great boss, and really makes all of that possible.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. I don't know you too well just yet, because I just started with the Guard, but you're obviously a very humble person. So I want to make it clear for the record, we asked her to come speak with us today.
Yes.
This was not pushed from her end. So let's make that very clear. So let's jump to the next question here. I think we're looking at our number 3. What are some of the most challenging aspects of being a military member, and how have you overcome them?
I don't know. For me, it hasn't been that hard, I guess. What's interesting about it is that if you had known me in high school or in college, you would never have seen me in a uniform. So I think part of that is because I get a little rebellious. That's my INTJ personality coming out. I like to poke at rules that I think are nonsensical, and the military has a lot of those sometimes. And so for me, it's interesting. Some of the things that I think people really like about the military, having that structure, having a lot of tradition background, are things that I don't normally enjoy. I like the teamwork aspect of it, and I like just the fact that it's populated by people who are driven by a higher purpose.
Yeah.
So it's little things that are hard for me, right? It's hard for me to show up in the morning at 7:30. I am not a morning person. I have never been a morning person.
You're not alone on that.
I feel you on that too.
Oh, it's rough. And so for those of you who are, just remember, some of us are still pretty, good members of the team. We just might not be there first thing in the morning. Just things like that. I think a lot of the challenging aspects for the military are the same as they are for civilians. Sometimes you have to work with people you don't like. Sometimes you have to do things or tasks you don't like. But that's just part of life. I would say deployment. I've never gotten to deploy. So I spent a year in Korea. It's not the same. So challenging aspects for me, I think, are just trying to find a way to still be yourself in an organization that wants or tries to get people to be a little bit standardized.
Yeah.
But hopefully my example shows that you can still be yourself within reasonable limits, and succeed in an organization that sometimes people, I think, don't realize that you have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said. Because some people think, you get in the military, you have to do this. They're going to tell me what to do, what to eat, everything. And it's not always that way, especially in the Air Force.
You can still be yourself.
Yeah, I think part of it is just finding your niche, right? Where do you fit best? What can you help solve? What problems are you best equipped to deal with? And sometimes we get a little focused on, their test scores put them here. And maybe that's you out there listening, if that's you. And don't let that freak you out or make you feel like you can't move past that. Sometimes it just takes a while to figure out who you are. I didn't figure that out until, my late 20s. And even then, I would say I'm still learning who I am.
Yeah.
You just kind of got to keep flowing and ebbing and adapting.
No,
exactly. Yeah. All right. So we're moving right through these questions. See, I told you, short and sweet, ma'am. Okay. So And this can be short, but can you describe a typical day in the Air Guard for you? What do your duties entail?
There is no typical day. That's how I would describe it.
Okay.
Sometimes I get no phone calls and I just sit there and get to work in quiet luxury on things that are long-term projects. That happens about once a year. The rest of the time, I think I have a structure to the day with meetings, and then there's inevitably a crisis or something that pops up that, diverts our attention, and then we work through those challenges. So it's various things. The duties, I think traditionally, right, lawyers are supposed to write legal reviews and analyze facts and say, yes, you can do this, and no, you can't do that, and kind of here's your left and right limits, and think about this risk, commander, as you make these decisions, right? Really, our job is to advise command. We advise command on a whole bunch of things, right? It's not just military discipline and who should, get in trouble for what. It's, is that an appropriate expenditure? Can we do the contract this way? Mm-hmm. Is that ethical? Can we use the plane to go perform this mission? There's lots of weird things that fall under the judge advocate umbrella, I suppose. Sometimes we're just there to, be the sound box, right, for commanders to vent about stuff that's frustrating them, or to just listen and say, hey, your head's in the right place. It just every day brings something different. And that's one of the reasons I think I've survived in this job this long, is because it is so varied. Yeah. And you just, you're going to walk into something, you just don't know necessarily what you're going to walk into. Yeah. And so that makes it fun. It keeps it entertaining.
For sure. I feel like a lot of people are, it's daunting to go to legal. I got to go to legal for XYZ. It's always daunting, right? Mm-hmm. But it's way worse when you fail to go to legal in the first place and ask a question and then end up accidentally doing something the wrong way and then find yourself in that position, right?
Yeah, I would say if there's one thing I could just implore people is to ask earlier rather than later, because it's often easier to get things right the first time and to let us help you figure out a way to resolve it than for us to try to come in and fix it after the fact. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we can, and that's great. Sometimes we can't, and that's because of, the way the laws are structured. Mm-hmm. But, really our job is to help people find the right path through a situation. Right. And that can be personal, right? You got a legal assistance issue or, personal thing that you're trying to work through. We can often help with that, but it also applies to commanders and supervisors. So, maybe there's a really pernicious employment problem or a relationship problem going on in your unit. You're just not sure what to do. Mm-hmm. There are offices like mine available out there to help, so people don't feel alone or hamstrung in trying to deal with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, jump into our next question. You've already kind of hinted at this by how you've been giving a few examples, but how has your time in the military impacted your personal and professional life? The thing that you've kind of hinted at already is, being yourself is critical, and you have allowed it to really impact who you are as a person, as an individual. You brought that to your uniformed service.
Yeah, so there's kind of two answers to this. The one that's interesting, so it's interesting. Okay. When I first joined the military, at the time I was married, and it was a lot. My husband was very supportive, right, at the time. And interestingly, as you become an officer, and I imagine this is true for enlisted as well, and you start becoming used to this military environment and you start to understand leadership and get confidence in your abilities and grow professionally, that is going to trickle over into your personal life too. That doesn't always trickle over in a positive way. And so interestingly, right, there were some frustrations he's now my ex-husband. He was a little frustrated and at one point really felt like we had kind of grown apart. And I don't think he expected the military to have as much impact on me as apparently it did. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think before maybe I had been a little bit more meek and it was just a question of standing up for myself and being more confident in decision making and moving forward and actioning out things that needed to happen in life, right? So that's kind of, it started off maybe in a negative way, but honestly, as I continue to grow and, feel more confident in my abilities. And as weird as this is, right, to be recognized for that kind of, for folks like me, sometimes we undercut our abilities and we think, I don't deserve whatever X, Y, Z. And I'm guilty of that a lot. But this kind of helps reinforce that, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm really good at this. Maybe I'm in the job I'm supposed to be in. Maybe I'm a valuable member and I can go forward and do all these things. And so on a personal and professional level, that's really important, right? And so I would say, supervisors that are out there, don't undercut that for your members. Like if they're doing good things, maybe you need to tell them, because if they're like me, they will constantly sell themselves short.
And even like you said, for this particular award that you're talking about, one of your teammates, essentially, they passed it over to you saying, hey, fill this out. We think you'll be good for it. So, and you didn't earn it by accident.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I feel like women in the military, we do that a lot to ourselves. We have that imposter syndrome.
100%.
Oh my gosh, so bad.
Just had this discussion literally yesterday, and there were 4 of us sitting there talking about it, and every single one of us said we tend not to take I don't want to say responsibility like it's a bad thing, but we take responsibility for all the things that are bad, but we don't take the recognition when things go well. And I don't know if that's cultural or I don't think the military makes us do that. I think it's just a challenge that we still have to overcome.
I think so too. So how do you balance your military duties with your personal life and your hobbies?
I would say that I need to do a better job at that because I just moved. My house is still full of boxes because, as usual, I've volunteered to do like 20 different military things on every weekend, and so my boxes haven't been unpacked. But the kitchen's been unpacked, so that's good.
Nice. Most important.
It's super hard, right? Because I really like what I do, and so I tend to keep wanting to do more things and more cool things, and that means I'm choosing to spend time away from things that might be good for just some rest and relaxation. I do better in the summer because the weather is nice here. And so I can get outside, I can garden, dig around in the dirt, walk my dogs, maybe go do some mountain biking. So summer's easier. Winter's hard in Wyoming with that. It's just tough. I think all of us need to do better to cut out more time for that, because it's really rejuvenating.
For sure.
And if we don't, we get burned out. So I have to remind myself of that. It's okay to take time to do the stuff you like.
Well, we'll expand more on that then. I mean, our next question that we had was, what do you do while you're not working? I mean, you're talking about mountain biking, hiking. What are those things for you that really allow you to, separate from work when you need to and make that good balance?
So I would say I am a hobby hoarder.
Nice.
And so for people with kind of the traits that I have, we like all kinds of different things, right? I like to learn new things. So I have sewing stuff, I have cooking stuff, I have gardening stuff, I have dog stuff, I have hiking stuff, mountain biking stuff, snowshoes, skiing. I would snowboard, except that I flipped over once and that scared the crap out of me. If there's a hobby and it's not necessarily a traditional sport, I'm probably going to be into it, and I will collect all the stuff and then just look at the fact that I collected it.
You're a very open-minded person. So, I mean, a very important question. What kind of dogs? What kind of dogs do we have?
Okay. Well, so right now I have a blue tick coonhound named Maggie. She's awesome. I've got a thing. He's a thing. He's like a little mutt thing. I don't know. Pit something
That's
or
how
other.
my parents described me.
Thing.
Exactly.
Kidding.
He's a little stray mutt with a floppy ear and one that got partly bitten off by Maggie because she has separation anxiety. And then my boyfriend's dog, Mika, is a Basenji, which is like an African hunting dog that's kind of small, and she really likes to lick. So
we got to see photos after this record.
Yes. They're great. They definitely keep me busy, though. They're like people, like having a bunch of little toddlers that don't talk to you, wandering around your house and demanding food.
Which is nice when they don't talk back, right? Animals.
No? Well, they do.
They do in different ways, but
yes.
Yeah. Okay, so back on a serious question.
Okay, yeah. So what advice would you give to someone considering joining the Air Guard or any other military branch?
So usually when I get this question, people want to know about being a JAG specifically. So that's interesting because often, let me think about this one and come back to it.
Okay.
Because Usually my advice is to someone who wants to be a lawyer is don't be a lawyer. And that's really because law school is incredibly expensive. It's really difficult to find jobs. You end up with coming out typically with like ridiculous amounts of student loan debt. And a lot of people go into law because they don't know what else to do. I would say don't go into law if you don't know what else to do. Go into anything else, literally anything else, because you can always become a lawyer. Military law, if you're going to be a lawyer, is pretty awesome because of the amount of interesting skills that you get to develop that you just aren't going to get in any other type of practice. Yeah. You get variety, you get to do courtroom, especially if you go active duty, you'll get to work in the courtroom. And even if that's terrifying for you, which it is for a lot of folks, it's a really good skill set to have, and it makes you very marketable when you come out. But the nice thing, too, is that you get to be an officer. You get to be in a lot of the big meetings where decisions are being made from a very early level in your career. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. And if that's something that folks are interested in, I guess, start talking to folks that are in the Air Force or in the Guard and really get a sense of what that's like before you try to pursue that path. And that will help, I don't know. I think that's just the advice, right? Don't just jump into it thinking it's going to be one way and then get frustrated if it's not what you expected. Do your research, learn about it. Go to Bring a Friend Day if that's something that you're able to go do, and intern. If you're in a college, go intern with a position in the Air Force or in the Army or wherever you wanted to go, and just learn about it, and then you know what you're walking into, and you'll know if it's a good fit or not. Yeah, no, even just doing like a job shadow for a couple of days, I feel like very few organizations, and military, of course, would deny someone who was showing a true, genuine interest of, hey, this is what I want to do. Can I come shadow you? I'm sure they would do it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. All right. A fun question here for you, ma'am. Reveal something about yourself that others might find surprising. I had to think about this one. And so the answer is I was a ski instructor for 2 years at Winter Park, Colorado. Oh, and yes, wow. I'm not a bad skier. I haven't done it in a while, but I'm a decent skier. Awesome. I can keep up with just about anybody. But I also fall over a lot because my balance is terrible. Wow. Yeah, we all do. So good, but yet also clumsy. So there you go. That's awesome. Well, cool. So I got the final question. You got the final on big here. Question. Yes. All right. I'm still hung up on Maggie, the Mike Tyson dog that bit off the other dog's ear. I'm still hung up on it. Just so you know. Been thinking about it ever since. All right. Last question. Last question. What motivates you what motivates you to continue military service? You said you're at 12 years-ish now, right? Yep. What keeps you going? So there's several things. One is, I was active duty for about 5.5 years, and I thought, okay, I'm tired of moving around. I want to just be in a stable place. And my dad was terminally ill at the point, and I knew my next assignment would involve deploying, and that was not a good time in my life for that to happen. So I tried at that point to join a civilian law firm and discovered that while I could do it, and I probably would have done just fine, I just didn't enjoy it. I wasn't happy. I struggled with the managerial style, and I'm a little too independent to work for partners, which is weird when you think about why are you staying in the military if you're too independent? And part of that is because I have the luxury of having bosses that allow me to work in the way I need to in order to get things done, and I know that not everyone has that, but I'm fortunate. The thing is, really, when it comes to military service, I love this job, right? I love the opportunities that I get to go out and advocate for our airmen. And I love getting to work with people who are driven by doing something bigger than themselves. It's not about money for them. Do we get paid well? Yes. Or do we have a comfortable life? Sure. Is it as much as we could be making on the outside? For most of us, probably not. Don't join the military to get rich. Right. You can be comfortable, but probably not rich. And so it's nice to be around people who are driven by those things. And that's who I would rather spend my time with. It's nice to get to go to an environment and develop friendships, professional friendships with the people that I work with, and to get to learn about all the cool missions that we do and all the different opportunities that people have. And I'm just lucky to be able to have a position where I can support those folks. And so that's really what drives me to show up every day. There's a lot of crud that I have to deal with that's not as fun. Disciplinary issues, really sad stories, people who are having really serious problems. That's hard. And that it can be very draining, but it gets bounced back by all the positive things that we can contribute on a given day. And so that's really it. That and retirement. Retirement would be nice. I invested into the old system, and so I got to get to 20.
I wondered if you're going to throw the R word out in this conversation.
Of course. I mean, but honestly, too, like, if you knew me before this, and I mentioned this, right? So I was the kid who, I think, God, when I applied to one of the law schools, they asked me to list every job I'd had since I was 18. And I think by the time I got to that list, it was like 60 jobs.
Wow.
So, well, let's just say that I always was wanting to learn new things, and I get bored with routine. And so I wasn't fired from any of them. I just would try different things to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
This is the only thing I've ever found where you get that variety and that ability to move around and expand and grow and challenge yourself without having to bounce around from organization to organization. Why would I leave that? That's huge.
Yeah.
And so it's, for people like me who need that kind of change, it's a fantastic organization.
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Sounds like we all have the Air Force core values, of course, that allows kind of serves as our collective true north. But I agree with you. Everyone who's wearing the uniform, for the most part, we share the same values. And I think you hit on a really good point where they typically can be making a few dollars more in the civilian world, but there's that greater purpose. And I think very well said. Anything to add, Jackie?
It was really nice learning about you today because, again, like Colonel Tweedy was saying, I don't think we get the chance to hear these stories and get to know people on drill weekends. So hopefully this show, people listen to this and they get to know you more and maybe get inspired by some of the paths you've taken and experiences you've had. So I really appreciate you being here today, ma'am.
Of course.
You did a great job and crushed it. Exactly. And
thank you, Major Hinkle.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here today. Thank you for listening to Behind the Uniform.